new video that I know I've done this with Vue.js, but I'm going to do it with React and Ionic. We're going to show how to do image upload from the camera to Supabase storage. What we're going to do is we're going to split the video into two sections. So if you've already figured out how to use the camera and you're comfortable with that, you can skip the first section, and then the second section is where I'm going to focus on how you get the image from the camera, upload it to Supabase, and get a list of those images and basically manage the images in the buckets. So like I said, part one, which is what I'm going to start with now, is going to be about using Capacitor, the Capacitor plugin, to get the camera working, and then part two is where we're going to do the file upload. So let's get started. So I have, to save us some time here, I've already created a basic React project. Let me see if I can open that up for y'all. So let's push this over here. And this is the basic application right now. It is based off the default list project. And what I have done is I went in and ripped out all the stuff I don't need. So we basically just have a home component, which is what you're viewing, which has nothing in it. It's set up to set a local state variable called storage items with the items that we're going to pull out of the buckets, and then it has this storage items maps where it will render it, and then I also have a separate component called view storage item, which will provide specific details about the storage item. So that's all we have here right now. So let's hop to adding our Capacitor plugin, and like I said, I'm going to kind of roll through this part pretty quickly. I'm just including it in the video for completeness, but there's a bazillion videos on how to integrate this. Ionic has actually even provided one also. So let's get moving. I like to stay inside of Visual Studio Code once I'm inside of Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to open up another terminal here, and I'm just going to copy the commands to install Capacitor, and we'll let that run to install Capacitor. Since I'm just going to do this in the browser for now, I'm not going to worry about setting any of these iOS or Android positions. Additional permissions and variables. We're going to focus on the PWA here, and it kind of explains how you need to integrate the PWA into your application. So you click on this PWA elements, and there's additional elements you need to install. So let's install the PWA elements down here. We'll get them all installed. And then we're going to need to modify specifically, since we're doing React, in your index.ts or index.tsx or index.js, we need to add this additional imports for defined custom elements. So let's get over to there. And then we have to actually use the custom elements. So we'll bring them down here in the bottom. So now that we have that set up, we can hop back to, let's go back to the Capacitor camera. And where were we down here? They kind of lay out exactly what we're going to do to take an image. I have some of this code written out already that I'll cut and paste in, and we'll walk through it, but let's just make sure that everything's in place and this guy is running properly. Let's Control C and let's kind of run it again. What we're going to do is we're just going to stick a button up on the top here in our menu, and we are going to just ion buttons on EUTTONS. Make sure we slot, and then add. Keep it real simple. Add. So we're gonna let's add a button around this. Add all missing imports. So we have our add button, which is added there on the end, and then what we're going to do is on click. I'm going to take a picture. Okay, and so let's add this function, take a picture. And since we know it's going to be async, let's add async on there. And then now let's add our functionality to take an actual photo. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to drop, like I said, I'll just drop in some code and then kind of walk through it. So what we have is we're going to have this camera object that I definitely need to import. So let me go back to my code and make sure I import that plugin. That was a step I missed from here. So I need this import. So let's copy that import up at the top. Put it right under our other Ionic React stuff. And so now I have the camera. And then we want to keep track of the path that we got back from the image. So let's create a state variable for that. And so set image path. And then for that, we're just going to put the path. And then up here, we need to create that state variable. And so we're going to say const image and a image path, comma set image use state any, set it to an empty string to get us started. Okay, so that is how we will set the path. So what's going on here? So what's happening here is that depending upon how you got the image, it will either show up as a path or show up as a web path. The web path, I believe, is what you're getting when you use the PWA, which is what, see, this is web path, blah, 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 blah. This is what we're using, this is what we're using when we get the PWA. And this is what we're using when we are using on device. So this basically allows our code to work for either scenario. All right, so that's what's going on there. Now the next thing that we want to do after we get the image is we need to convert this into something that can actually be uploaded. And so the easiest way to convert it into something that can actually be uploaded is by using the fetch API. And so that's what we're going to do. And so so now that we have the set image path, and I think we should be able to test this right now. Let's go into our application. Let's open our tools, our developer tools. Actually, I didn't console log it anywhere. So let's console log it somewhere. Console log image path. All right, let's try this again. And let's spread this out a bit. Get us some more room. See what we have on our console. And we have our image path right there. So that's what we're going to use to actually save this image. And then just so that everyone knows that I can actually take a picture. Let me get over here. And you can see the blob. So you can see the blob down here, which means that we have our picture taken. Let's close this up. And we've covered what we wanted to cover in the first part of the video, which was getting our camera integrated, taking a picture, and actually getting the path. So now let's move on to the part where we actually need to integrate Supabase. Now the second part of this video, which is integrating the camera, i.e. or the picture we've taken from the camera, and getting it uploaded into Supabase buckets. So for those who haven't used Supabase before, I strongly encourage you to check out some other videos. Actually, I have a few on how to actually set up your Supabase environment. I'm not going to go into all that because there's tons of content already on how to set up a Supabase project. But so I'm going to open up my account here on Supabase. I have an existing project here called Bahamas DB1 from the work that I did when I was down in Bahamas. So I can open up this project. If you look at this project right now, you can see there are no storage buckets created. And so I can manually create a new bucket here, or you can do it through scripts. So if you look here at the SQL scripts, let's see. If you take a look down here at this, where is this user management storage, and you scroll down to the bottom, you can see this section here called setup storage. And this is how you can create a storage using a script. Or it looks like they now have this new UI, which wasn't there in the beginning. If I go back to storage, looks like, let's see, can I create a new bucket here? So let's create a new bucket. Let's call this image bucket, image, and let's just make public. We're going to make it public for now. So let's create this bucket. And so there's our bucket that has been created. There's nothing in it, and we're going to put some files in here. As I said, there is a process to similar to what they've done here in this user management starter, where you can do a script, set up your buckets, and then you can actually control access to them. Ours should be set up for public since we checked the public box. So let's take a look at it. So there's our public bucket. You can see the policies, image bucket, no policies, no policies, no policies. I guess because it's public, there's no policies set on it. So, yeah. So now that we have everything set up here, we need to go back and set up some code on our client side. So let's move this back to the side, and let's get Supabase integrated into here. I'd like to separate out the Supabase functionality into a separate library, so we're going to follow that approach. I think that's also the approach that they do recommend in the documentation. So let's see if we can get over to some documentation here about the Supabase client installing. Let's start to install some stuff. So we're going to go back to my terminal window that I had opened down here in the bottom. We're going to install Supabase. And then, that's installed. We've installed the library for JavaScript. Now let's move over to initializing and creating a client. It's once again, it's pretty straightforward how it's done here. We're going to copy this create client example, but let's create our Supabase client file first. So we're going to go into source. We'll just create Supabase client.js, and we will copy this code here. So we're going to copy. And so we now need to get these URLs and the keys from our project. So we need to get our keys to set up our project appropriately. So let's go back to our project, and under down here under, let's check API. So here it tells you how to get everything set up. This is the code that we've kind of moved over and brought in here. They have, let's do it this way, so I can actually set up my process M file and bring my variables in that way, so we don't have to show them. So let's move our Supabase URL down here, and then we're going to put our Supabase key down here, and that will get us set up for that. And then the last thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to export default Supabase. So this way, anyone who imports this can get access to the Supabase client that has just been created. The next thing that we need to do is I'm going to create a .env local here, and inside of here I need to put these keys. And so the first thing that you need to know, because you got to make sure you do this right, is that when you put these keys in here, because this is React, you need to start them with React app. So let's get this and fix this down here. That will give us our React Supabase key. And then what I'm going to do is inside of my .env local, I will basically set this value, and then after I'm done with that, I'll come back. You'll need to do the same thing, but where do you get the keys? So that's the question is, I get my keys from right here in authentication. So the section that you want to look for is, there's a section called authentication, and when you go down to API authentication, what I've hidden it off the screen, but what you'll see there is it will show your Supabase key, and that's the key that you want to copy and paste into your .env file. Okay, so let's get off of that page so it's not confusing anyone. So now we're back. Let's see if we can restart and run everything. Let's go back to our application. Push this, give me a little bit more room. I'm gonna also some more tools, developer tools. What we're gonna do is just console log out Supabase. And then now we're going to import our Supabase client into our application where we need it, and hopefully we'll see our log getting dumped. So let's go into home text, and then inside of here, we're going to need to import Supabase. All right, so that should import it and save. And then what do we need? Let's see. Let me make sure I imported this correctly. So let's go back to my client. It's default import. So yes, that's correct. So I have the client. And we could start by just seeing, do we have a user or a session? It's quite possible that this is going to come back with a value since I have been playing around with Supabase on my computer. Supabase dot auth dot API dot auth dot session. So if there's a session, it'll console log it out. I don't think there is one yet. It comes, but this is just a way console dot log. We can confirm that my client is set up appropriately. And as I'm typing this, I'm knowing this is going to fail because after you add a .env file, where did my .env file go? After you add a .env file, you need to restart. So first of all, this needs to be at the top level of your project. So it should be out here. But after you add one of those, you need to restart your server. So let's go here, let's cancel it, and let's restart it. Okay, and now it's saying Supabase key. Yes. Supabase key is required. Oh. I put this, the mistake I made was I pasted in this process env. You just need the React app Supabase key. That was so the key name is React app Supabase key. I pasted in too much. So let's refresh this, and then we need to restart. Go back home. And looks like everything started appropriately. I can go to my tools, look at my developer tools, and that session is a function, so let's go like that. And it's giving me back a session. So as I suspected, I had logged in before and there's a current session in place. But that's what's happening with that. So we know at least that Supabase is kind of fired up and ready to go. So now let's start to add the functions to upload the images. So let's close this out and go from there. We know we have access to the client. Let's start to upload the images. And so what we can do is let's just leverage the documentation that they provided for us. There's great documentation on buckets, and so we're going to go here to storage and then get bucket, update bucket. What we want to do is from upload. We want to upload an image to our bucket that we created. So let's just copy this code for uploading the image, and what we're going to do is put this way. We're going to go back. Let's close a couple of our clients. We don't need all of these clients open. Go back to our client. Refresh our page. And so here we take the picture, and then the next step is to actually upload the picture. We're going to go down here and we're going to say await upload image. And we're just going to pass in the path to the image that we want to upload. And let's add our upload function now. So let's go up here and so upload image. Is that what I called it? Constant upload image, and then we're going to have a path and put some code in there. Make sure we set this to async. The catch here is that, so now we have a path, and undefined is not assignable to string, path. Just to get past that type issue for now. Okay, so what we're going to do here, so the trick that you want to do is you want to take this path that you have and you want to get a blob, because although, so these are all, they've updated this, so these are all the different things you can upload: form data, file object, buffer, or blob. We're going to get a blob. And so the way to get a blob, the easiest way to get a blob, is to just convert this thing using fetch. So the idea is that, let me just start to paste some code in here. So I can do a fetch on my path, and then I'll get my response. And then I can take my response and I can say const blob. And then I can do an await with my response to my response blob. And then that will convert this thing to a blob. And then, after I've converted to a blob, I can actually upload it. So I can go like this. So now I can say copy this. And I can come down here and I can say blob. And that's using our bucket name. So let's go over here, take a look at our buckets. Storage. We have a bucket called image bucket. So let's make sure we get that right. IMAGE image T. And then we're going to save it, and we will take the, and so the data is what we're going to get back, and errors if we get an error. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say if error then alert. We'll just use the basic Windows alert, and then we'll say error message. So we'll see what the error is. Otherwise, let's just console log our data for now, so we can see what we got back. So, and then of course we need to return something, and so we'll just return it true either way. Okay, so let's get a unique name for what we upload. So to get a unique name, we can do some magic to kind of strip the name off of the path that we were given. And then that should give us our file name. And then what we'll do is we'll just add the file name onto the end here. And let's go like this. We'll use our friend the backtick here to kind of get this to interpret that. And so now we should have a unique file name. And let's see if we can actually upload something on our first try. It usually doesn't work the first try. I'm doing this live, so please be patient with me. So let's see if we can take an image. Row violates role of security deposit for table objects. That's interesting. From image bucket. Maybe there's no, maybe I don't need that pass. So let me take this out of there. Just put the file name. My bad. Let's try again. I didn't think that I needed to put any more security on that. I guess I don't know as much as I thought I did know about it. I do need to set some sort of policy even on a public bucket, which I find strange. So I'm just going to copy this script from another project that I have working on, and let's go back to our buckets. What I did realize is that, which I don't understand, I thought the public would give everyone access to this image bucket, but I think I still need to actually manually set some policies on it. So we're going to go back to our SQL command, and we're going to open up a new query, and I'm basically taking this. So we don't need to insert the bucket because we already have the bucket, but we do need to set the policy on the storage. And so what we're going to do is, like I said, all these examples came from the documentation, and I'll also include a link to this. But basically what I'm doing is going through the process of setting up access policies for this new bucket I've created. So it's basically saying these images are publicly accessible. I would give it the bucket ID. Bucket ID, this is a typo, so let's fix this. So that should give everyone access to it. Let me rename this. Rename query security for image bucket. So now I have this, and this. So now I need to actually run this script. So no rows are returned. It was successfully completed. Now let's go back to our application, see if that addresses the error that we got. I'll do a little bit more research and see if I can get an explanation for why the public didn't work. So let's do the add. And it looks like it worked that time. So let's go to our tools, developer tools. And our image got saved in a bucket. And we can go to our database. We can go to our buckets. And let's click on our bucket, refresh. And here's the image that we just uploaded to the bucket. So that's how we get the images saved to the bucket. And then I guess the last part, what we want to do here now is we want to actually get the images out of the bucket. So just a quick look at how we're going to do this before we clean it up. Let's go back to our from upload. And we should be able to do this from list function. So let's just pull this from list function out. Let's go over to, looks like all the action's happening in home. So I'll go back to home, and we'll come up to this frontier where every time you enter, we'll execute a function. Let's move it down here. Const get all images equals async. We'll put that in here. We will follow the same, let's give us some more room here. Follow the same approach that we did below, how we handle the errors. Let's change this to our bucket, which is image bucket. And there is no folder. I believe we put everything right at the top. So if you're an image bucket, just right at the top. So I think I can leave this blank. And let's see what we get back. I've never used this function before, so this is kind of a new one for me. So we will, and then what we want to do is we want to do the set storage items with this function. So I'm going to take this out, and at the end of this function, I'm going to call set storage items with data. And then in INV we'll enter, we'll call get all images. And let's put our error in. So if there's an error, display the error message, else set storage item from the get all images, and then we call get all images when we enter the page. Let's see what happens. So well, all right. Okay. That way, let's console log our data. So when we console log, we get our list of the one object that does exist in the bucket with the information that's associated with it. So the next thing that we're going to do in the next part and the final part of the video is to actually take the data that's getting set in the storage items and kind of clean up this UI down here so that we can kind of list out all the data that we have. So that's what we got coming up. To get our list of items, let's just kind of show that we're actually getting a list. We can go down here and inside of our home page, instead of just putting this kind of empty div with the ID, let's actually just show the ID, so we can just show that we're actually getting something back. And so we know that we're getting the images back that are uploaded. And the other thing that we want to do is let's see if we can actually render the image that's coming back. And so I think the best way to do that is let's create a separate component to manage that. We're going to call const render image, and we'll just set this up as a simple stateless function, and what we're going to pass in is the path. Will tell us where the actual image is and how we can kind of upload it. And we're going to get the image in the beginning, so let's do this. Say use state. So we only want to do it once, and so we're going to set this to that. And then all this guy needs to do is just render an image. So we'll just return, and what it's going to return is an Ion image. It's source, and the source will be the assigned URL, and that's what we're going to render. So let's import Ion image, add all missing imports. We get our path. Let's just see if we can just set our path to this guy. And then here, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap a function. So we're going to call an async function in here. So to do that, we need to wrap it like that. And then inside of here, why is this complaining? Path. Oh, so let's make this right. Let's say this guy is a array. It's function component, and it has. Let's just we can just set its type to any. Let's see. And it's complaining because it's never read. So let's go up inside of here and after this, sorry. So here, so right now what we're doing inside the div, we're just entering the ID, but what we also want to render is the image. So we're going to call render image, and then this has a path, and we're going to get that from s.path. Is it on there? And then we're going to close this out. So, all right, it's complaining because we're missing some things. So what we need to do is get the function to get the URL. So let's go back to our documentation and we can get this signed. Let's see, what's a public URL? In most cases, when you're logged in, create a signed URL to download a file without requiring permission. This URL can be valid for a number of seconds. Or the public URL. Since all of our stuff is public, I think we can use this get public URL. So let's try to get public URL first. If not, we'll switch. So let's copy this function over in here. Our bucket is image bucket. And we are, the lesson we learned from up here was that we just need the file name. We don't need anything else. So, and then this public URL is what we're going to set, is what we're going to save. So let's do that. Set URL, and then we'll say public URL, and then we need to get up here and kind of manage that. So we're going to say const public URL set public URL use date any, and we are going to ignore the error because we don't care, and this should be set public URL, not set platform. So wherever set platforms got imported, let's delete that. Go back down here. And then now we're going to take this public URL, and this is what we're going to feed into our Ion image. And we need to get the public URL from a specific path, and it should be this path that is passed in. Okay. And this is complaining. Why is it complaining that it, oh, why am I calling use date? This should be use effect. Okay, and we just want to call this when the path changes. All right, but now we got to pass in a path. So let's see what the data, let's see what our data looks like that we're getting back. So let's go to more tool, developer tools, and let's see. I took that console log out. So let's put, what I'm looking for is when we make this call up here, and we get back to these lists, where are we? We get back all the images. Query bucket to get all images. When we get back all these images, what does this data structure look like? So let's set a breakpoint here so we can see what this data structure is going to look like. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So our data, I think I can just use the path of the name. The name should be sufficient for the path, because if I look at how my data looks, yeah, that's all it's got. So let's just pass the name in. So let's go down here. And we're going to say s.name. And let's remove our debugger. And let's go back to our page and see what we get when we let this run. And we get our image. Let's move this back out of the way. So now you can see we got our image. So let's clean this up a little bit. And let's add some comments. So query bucket to get all images and set the results to the local state variable storage items. Right. And then down here we're uploading the image. Upload to storage bucket, convert path to blob. get file name from path. Right? Then down here, take picture using Capacitor plugin. And then here's where we're going to render everything. So we're looping through the map to render the images. Let's kind of try to contain this thing a bit. Div. Let's set this guy's style. $200. Get that better. Can I get my margin? I'm never good at this. I'm not a CSS guy. Well, I guess I got it this time. Alright, so now we have our image. That's the ID. Alright, so that's my image that I uploaded. And what's this last thing? Let's do this. Class name equals ion padding. Alright, so I have an image. Let's try and add another one and see what we get. Okay. So let's refresh, and we got our second image. So I really don't think there's much left to do. We've covered all the high points we wanted to cover. We know how to get an item from the list. We know how to get the list. We showed how to download to get the public URL, and we've showed how to upload. So as I said, oh, actually, we need to do one last thing, which is this idea of every time I go back, I need to update the page. I think, let's see if there's a function that we can listen to changes. I know that there is one on data that you can actually subscribe to changes. Let's see if we can subscribe here. So actually, what we'll do is we'll just clear our set storage items every time an image is uploaded. That seems to be the easiest solution since we're not going to do anything with state management. So what I will do is on the upload console log data, if this is set, then what we'll do is we'll just call, how can I trigger this guy to go? We'll just call get all images again. So now let's see, when I add an image, and it automatically updates it. It's not the most effective way, but at least we get the results that we wanted to get, which is our images getting uploaded and everything changing when we make modifications. As part of this test, I wanted to actually test it on device, and I chose to do it on Android because normally I end up doing everything on iOS, so I figured, hey, let's show the Android folks some love. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to make sure you go into your Android manifest. This is, of course, after you, let's go back here. This is, of course, after you follow all the instructions for setting up your project to run on Capacitor platform. Specifically for Android, I did all these. You install Capacitor Android, you do the npx cap add, and then you do the npx cap run Android. But if you remember, the camera needed additional permissions. And so I went in and I added those additional permissions here inside my manifest, and then I built my project. So one other thing that I discovered when I was testing it was that I had to switch the order of these. You want to put the web path first, and the reason you want to put, because you're going to get a camera path and also you're going to get a path and also a web path, but you always want to use the web path because the web path is needed for the way we're converting. Where are we? Yes, this has to fetch can only work with a web path. So you definitely need to make sure that you're using the web path here first. And so I made that change. And then now I'll kind of plug in my phone, take a photo, and show you the recording. Okay, so you can see I have our application as we've shown before, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click to add a photo, and first let's see if we can get one from photos. So we'll take a local photo, and that photo got added appropriately. And then now we'll take a photo from a picture. We'll take a picture of my camera, taking a picture of my camera. And click OK. And you can see the picture of my camera. So everything worked fine on the device, which is what we wanted to demonstrate. So like I said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please definitely check it out. Check out the source code and let me know what your thoughts are. Bye.